Alright, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, classic lesson non-classic. This is number 3368, Doubleshot number 3262. Got two Marvel trades, first of which is Vision and Scarlet Witch. Sorry about that. The Saga of Wanda Vision. This book contains the first volume for Vision and Scarlet Witch, was 4 issues, and also the second volume, which was 12 issues, along with West Coast Avengers, Volume 2, Issue 2. Yeah, it's mostly written by Steve Gar, Bill Mantlo, art by Don Heck, Rick Lenardi, Richard Howell, and Al Milgrom. The cover's by Alex Ross. I almost forgot, it did contain Giant Size Avengers number 4, which is... Okay, so it contained Giant Size number 4, the first volume of Vision Scarlet Witch, which was released in 1982, 4 issues. The second volume, obviously, 12 issues, and the West Coast Avengers. The Giant Size Avengers issue is pretty much basically an adventure that Vision and... basically, the big thing with this particular Giant Size book is that it leads into the wedding of Vision and Scarlet Witch, and also Mantis marrying a version of the swordsman, though this was retconned to be an alien. Yeah. And apparently these two went off to have a baby. She was gone for several years. This was Eckhart's way of writing her out of Marvel Comics for several years. Because then she popped up over in an independent company, then she popped up in DC as Willow, and then she went back to Marvel. But it's a very good story here. It's a classic adventure story. It leads into the miniseries released in 1982, which is done by Bill Mantlo. This is mostly put the Vision of Scarlet Witch living out in the countryside. This is basically them having their own house. Well, there's some horror elements here, like facing up against a guy with horns. Kind of a crazy supernatural type of story. It's something that we don't have the late Gene Colan doing the art of his miniseries. His art would really fit well with this one. But of course, this is basically where... Also, we do get a cameo here by Quicksilver and Crystal. Yeah. We just have a series of stuff happening, and then issue 3 happens to where Wonder Man shows up in his 80s garb. Yeah, I say his 80s garb because that's not his costume that Jack Kirby designed from. No, this is the 80s garb with the red coat. As a matter of fact, wearing this outfit, he did get himself a one-shot in the 1980s before eventually get his own ongoing series. We went back to a slightly different attire. So, and because he's here, of course his brother, the Grim Reaper, is here, obviously. Yep. And there he is, the Grim Reaper. And, fun fact, Vision would later fight the Grim Reaper in the first issue of his very brief ongoing released in the, I think it was written by Tom King, where he got killed off in the first issue by the Vision's wife, who was not Scarlet Witch, was somebody else, who killed him by whacking him dead with a cookie tray. I am not kidding. And given the fact it was an android, I was not really surprised about that. And then issue 4 is the big issue, which was later retconned by Rick Remender, but he probably had no choice in the matter. Where in this very issue, when of course you have Scarlet Witch and Vision meeting up with Luna, Crystal, and this was Luna was a baby, not nowadays, where she's basically like a little girl. And the big thing with this issue is that it reveals that Magneto is the father of Quicksilver Scarlet Witch. That was until 2015 when they retconned this. Because of movie rights. Yep. No, and of course, it was later clarified in our book that, like, basically, Scarlet, oh, you claim to be our father. And he's like, yeah, I am. And all because some stupid spell she casted during Access. And eventually, this miniseries launched a 12-issue limited series. Now, I think, and of course, basically in the opening issue, we have Henry Peter Gyrick experimenting on the Vision. Yes, he is experimenting. Of course, we have a flashback to the Invaders. Yeah, the classic team that created by Roy Thomas. Though the characters were not created by him. Comprised of Toro, he's the guy with the light orange. Jim Hammond, Human Torch. Bucky Barnes. Captain America. The woman flying back, that's Miss America. Not a very known villain, character that's the comics. And then fighting Giant Man, just revisiting this stuff here. And of course, basically, where Wanda is not happy with it, it's like, give me back my husband. You can't do this, witch. Yeah, he's not a citizen. He has no rights. We on the other hand. And she's like, you on the other hand have 1 minute to let him go with all charges dropped, or I will bring down this whole place. Do it. Yep. So he is released. And then because of this nonsense, they quit the Avengers. It's like, you agree, though? Like, of course, my little witch. Yep, and then they go off, they do their own retirement, because they quit being Avengers because of the nonsense. And then this leads into an adventure with the West Coast Avengers, which by we have a cameo here by the Silver Centaurian armor of Iron Man. We also see, get this, I think it was like an Akira, and I think this is Black Talon. They mentioned here last time the Akira was seen back in Spider-Man issue 50, which was the last issue of that first volume. And little fun fact with that issue, it is the only issue 50 ever released for Spider-Woman, because all their volumes that come afterwards do not last that long. Nope. The only volume comes close to being the second longest behind that one. It was actually the second volume by Dennis Hopeless, which actually I think was like volume 5, I think it was, and that was 17 issues. Actually, no, it was actually the 680 volume, the one that was before the most recent one they had. And that was really good. That was 21 issues. Like, if I were I was not happy to see the book end. As for Black Talon, last seen Avengers 152. And this is them teaming up for the fight Vision and Scarlet Witch. Because why not? And then you have it where, oh, the Grim Reaper shows up. It's like, Eric, you hear it last. Like, ooh, yes, because she's dating the Grim Reaper. Yeah, and, well, and of course Sam Williams is there, and they free him, and then this leads to West Coast Avenger stuff. And leads back over to Vision and Scarlet Witch for issue 2, where Wanda met Saga's brother once again. Yep. And at one point, he's running into the third Goliath, who later became Atlas in the 1990s. Yep. Yeah, and of course they work to take down his brother, and then the next issue is pretty much basically Appearance by Agatha Harkness, who they decided to de-age for the comic books because she was younger in the show. So they made her hot in the comics because of it. The subject, she was always depicted for decades as an old lady. Why in the world did it for? I have no idea. It's weird. Then at one point, Vision Girls are captured by someone running look like a version of a zoo, which should be because so like, they give off some cult, like inadvertently involved with a cult, but looking up basic things to power to stop them. And then by issue 4, yeah, it's discovered Scarlet Witch is pregnant with the Vision's children, which should be actually impossible due to the fact he is an android. Yep, and they're very happy. And of course, well, this is like a retcon of in West Coast Avengers book after this. Because someone wants to realize, though, this is a mistake, so, yeah. And of course, they're just happy, romantic. Of course, Quicksilver is very happy at the fact, basically, the sister is pregnant with basically twins. And throughout the remainder of the book, basically, she's appeared to be pregnant. They said the mutant come dinner, who turned out to be Magneto. Everyone's on edge, like, may I have to go? Thank you, Vision. PH, my son. Hello, my father. I brought a present to my granddaughter. He was like, she's sorry about you, don't think of it. Yep. So, yeah, it's a quite interesting situation. Yep. And then we see a vision of the Bird of Mutants, basically the one that debuted back issue 4 of X back in 1964, except basically it's all an illusion. Casted by frickin' Toad. Yes, Toad. Yep, and yeah, now he becomes a villain for this book for reasons. In later years, basically, the artists tend to thin him out, then he goes back to being chubby again. It depends on what artist best they want to do with him. At one point, get this, he was the janitor for the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. And also, he was in a one-sided relationship with Husk that she has no memory of. And the fact that she had this weird thing of basically, because her ability is like shedding her skin, but not like basically it would be bones afterwards. Apparently, she didn't do it for quite a while. It got built up so much, it caused it stink, that Toad in one issue, when she was like acting evil, just ripped all that skin off because so much excess skin that she had, and then she was back normal, no problem. And that was Jason Aaron did that. Yep, he wrote that. But not this. No, this is I think this is Stephen Hart wrote this. So, and of course dealing with him for a few issues. Then we have guest appearance by Power Man, aka Luke Cage. Cause why not? And of course, basically like, and we see, look at the panel here, her belly is getting bigger. Throughout this. Now you're probably thinking, Luke Cage solo, that's interesting. Excuse me, was this before he... Was this before seen with Iron Fist? Oh no, the Power Man Fist was publishing this point in time, so why in the world Iron Fist is not here is not very clear. They show me here because why not? And then for the next couple issues, we have the Enchantress here, who decides to... Yeah, and then we have Crystal starting to cheat on her husband. Yep, and this came to play also in the main Avengers book in the 1990s, where Quicksilver caught her with an insurance agent, and then he divorced her on the spot. Yeah, he divorced her. And here's the weird thing about Quicksilver and Crystal. They've never got back together. Nope, they have maintained a okay relationship with each other due to their daughter. Which Quicksilver is, as of currently, he's on great terms with his daughter. There's one point he wasn't, but then he was able to reconcile with no problem. In this book, for some reason, okay, let's throw in first Toad, who actually has a history of Scarlet Witch, but then we have the Enchantress trying to woo Vision, and it's lasts for a good couple issues. Issue 2, and then we have the Inhumans show up. Yep, the Inhumans show up in issue 10. Yep. And then we have Spider-Man show up in issue 11. Yes, Spider-Man is black costume. Well, this was published in 1985, so of course, basically, you see him here in the black costume. Because, of course, this costume was everywhere. I'm surprised this was not collected in the complete Alien Saga stuff, because he did appear in this costume for this issue. Yes. And there he is, appearing in the black symbiote costume. And fight a villain. And the last issue, basically, Wanda gives birth to her children. Her twins. Which I'll explain exactly what happened to them in a minute. And then we appearance by Wonder Man in a completely new costume. It seems like in all of these books, he goes through 3 different costumes. And after Fun Adventure, even appearance by Eternity for some reason. Eventually throughout this, basically, she gives birth to her twins. Yep. And everyone's so happy. Until basically, okay, so in West Coast Avengers, it was retconned that she was never actually pregnant. That she cast a spell to make herself appear to be pregnant. And the 2 kids apparently were part of, like, Master Pamu, I think his name was, where he became part of him, and then these souls were reborn, or reincarnated as Speed and Wicked of the Young Avengers. And kind of in a way, basically, they refer to Scarlet Witch as their mom, obviously. Yeah. And then, of course, then we had this weird thing happen in Avengers 500 where she went nuts over where her children are. It was a weird retcon with issue 500. The whole thing of Scarlet Witch having children probably was a good idea, except the fact that having with Vision is kind of impossible because of the fact he is machine. Yeah. But somehow and here's the weird thing about Vision. He has never met Speed and Wicked. Nope. Never. He has never met them. You're like, really? Yeah, he has never met these 2. At all. Not even Vision. Vision's daughter. Not even she has met these 2. Yeah, I'm like, why? Why would they not meet these 2 characters? It makes no sense. Now, in case you might ask the question, has Speed and Wicked met their Uncle Quicksilver? Yes, they have. In Avengers Children's Crusade, along with Magneto. And that kind of is the reason why they did not meet the Vision at that point in time, because he was dead. Even after he came back to life, they didn't bother doing anything with it. Like, they didn't meet each other again, so there's that. So, next up we have is a book that people are probably surprised, like, why didn't they put this book sooner? Nextwave, Agents of H.A.T.E. The complete collection. a 12-issue miniseries, 12-issue limited series released from '06 to '07, and released from the same time as Civil War 1. Comprised of Alyssa Bloodstone, Monica Rambeau, who I think was going by Photon at this point in time, Aaron Stack Machine Man, Captain Swearword, because of course he called himself that, and of course when he met Captain America, when he referred to himself as that, Steve Rogers beat the crap out of him. And of course, books written by Warren Ellis and artwork by Stuart Immonen. Basically, it's a lot of it's basically kind of like a comedy book where it's like they interact, and of course, there's also the subplot of like this crooked, this bad cop who's basically on the take, who basically takes bribes, and like he's at one point he's about to retire and he wants his last week of takes, so he's basically, oh, you can't deal in this alley, now let's give me my take. And oh yeah, then we go to this brothel where he basically is like, oh, you're not welcome here. It's like bullcrap, and he proceeds to basically punch a guy and get his way. And then he is infected by a cat who makes him into a robot, and eventually he's killed. And of course, Machine Man and Alyssa Bloodstone basically beat the crap out of him. Alyssa apparently has got history of police officers because they keep arresting her for stealing. I'm like, she's a monster hunter. Why the heck would she steal? It makes no freaking sense at all. And Machine Man's like, oh, I hate cops. Oh, people up too. Monica Rambeau's like, I'm a cop. No, you're not. Not anymore. You've not been a cop since the 1980s. You quit that job, remember? At least remember that, yeah, she was a cop, but she quit because of sexism. Yes, because her boss was a sexist. And they claim that, oh, you promote this one guy being capped, this way, she has more experience than a lot of the other ones. And he's like, we only have 4 boats. And she's like, bullcrap, you did it because he's a guy. That was basically what she was saying in the book. And, well, and she's like, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Then eventually she's like, then she quits. He's like, I remain captain. And the guy's never seen again. Yeah. And, then the Beyond Corporation was, oh yeah, we're under control of Devil Dinosaur, who's intelligent. Except this was later retconned, except this was a Ultimate Version Devil Dinosaur, not the classic Jack Kirby one. Oh no, it just looks like him. He's like, oh, I've got a cigar, wearing basic, like, oh, I'm like an evil maniac, and and they eventually beat him, and eventually the Beyond Corporation disappears from comics. And then it returned briefly in the pages of Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers after this. As the whole thing, Ages of Hate. That part of it returned. And then after Mighty Avengers, after that happened, where then it returned in Amazing Spider-Man as part of the Amazing Spider-Man Beyond storyline, which had like 4 different writers. It had some weird ideas for storytelling, though. Tevye himself basically is like he loves a rant about that storyline, but I get him calmed down with the Department of Sandwiches. Yes, the Department of Sandwiches, and I spoke to Zeb Wells about that. Yeah, that is very good comedy. Yes, yeah, because it was Dr. Octopus breaking into the Beyond Corporation because somehow the Beyond Corporation had basically purchased the rights named Spider-Man. Because that somehow was up for sale when Parker Industries went under. Somehow, despite the fact Peter was Spider-Man, and it was a storyline where he was like in a coma. But as for these other characters, Elizabeth Bloodstone still occasionally appears a lot throughout the years. Machine Man still appears a lot with Marvel Zombies. At one point, his face stopped being pink, became gray because of his dislike of people who are humans. Monica Rambeau still appears, no problem. It's basically like the whole thing with this book. It's like a tongue-in-cheek spy book, but the book is a lot of fun. Heck, there's one issue of the book. I think was issues. It was like toward the end of the book. I think it was like 11, 10, 11. I think it was, where basically because they were protesting Civil War I, and they put up a sign that says "Not a Civil War tie-in." Yeah, the subject had the little logo on the bottom. It's like not a Civil War tie-in. I have talked to Steve Millen about the guy who did the artwork for Civil War I. He told me the reason why the covers were the way they were was because that's what editorial wanted. Yes, seriously, that's why they were depicted like there was like a wide screen. It was like this spot where it's like Civil War, and the main cover takes up half the thing, and then other half of just the thing, this border. Yeah, that was simply the reason for it. But this book is a lot of fun, and Stuart Immonen still does stuff Marvel Comics nowadays. Warren Ellis, I don't think he does anything Marvel anymore. Not that I heard of, anyways. I mean, he didn't do a lot for Marvel. He did Doctor Strange. He did Thor. Let's see. First book he did in Marvel Comics was Hellstorm, Prince of Lies, the Dr. Jude series. He had a very lengthy run on Doom 2099. A couple one-shots. He was actually writing for Excalibur. Yep. He did the Age of Apocalypse tie-in. He did the first one for Storm. He had a brief run for Wolverine. A brief run for X-Force, Generation X, part of the whole Counter X stuff. He did some issues of Astonishing X-Men. But if you're going to ask me personally, like, what was his last book of Marvel? Even after this, he did some stuff. He did Universal, which followed up with stuff in the 80s. He did a brief run for Thunderbolts. Yes, Thunderbolts. But his last book he did for Marvel was Karnak. Yep, Karnak. A book that took 2 years to come out. Like, really? It did? Yeah, it did. And pretty much after he finished up Karnak, then he did the Wildstorm, which is basically a reintroduction to the Wildstorm universe. Even did Michael McCrea's series, which came out I think around the same time as that, and then he did but he does other stuff per se, but he doesn't do anything for DC or Marvel anymore, surprisingly. You might be asking, is Warren Ellis a terrible writer? No, he's not. Probably his most famous book he worked on for Marvel was the Extreme Story for Iron Man, which was loosely adapted of Iron Man's 1 and 2. Well, in the case of Iron Man 1, they adapted a flashback for that movie, and the main story itself, they loosely adapted for Iron Man 3. As a matter of fact, the character of President Ellis is named after him. So, what is basically he been involved with? The most recent thing? Well, they decided to adapt a webcomic he wrote into a series. But as for comic-wise, is he still active at Marvel? Well, he hasn't anything Wild Stem since '09. He apparently is still somewhat active in Marvel and Image. Image, let's see. Looks like for release-wise, he has not done anything since 2019. Of Marvel Comics, not since 2017. Yeah, not since 2017 when he did Karnak. That was the last thing he worked on at Marvel. For DC, last thing he was released for them was the Wallace and Mark Gray book. I think he's... Is he retired? Like you might ask. I don't think so. No, I think he's just busy doing TV work. That's probably what he's doing now. He's probably just working on... Well, he was working on the Castlevania series. That was the most recent thing he worked on. It just that currently, I think he may have stepped away because he's been probably writing comic books since the 1980s. So that's probably what he's doing now. Mm-hmm. But if you like the Castlevania series from Netflix, he's the one who basically was in charge of that show. Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Okay, so next up basically is going to be Doctor Who. Okay, thanks, Phil. Bye.